Hi, my name is Richard Leiter, a self-published author of literary fiction, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Thoughts on Writing. I have a very simple question for you. Do you want to be enlightened? The reason I ask it is, well, since you haven't already been enlightened, and you don't know what enlightenment is, how do you know that you really want it? Maybe you don't really want it. I don't claim to be a person who is enlightened or knows anything more than the next guy. However, I have heard of a concept called spiritual materialism, which simply means this. Some people claim that they want to become enlightened because what they really want to do is get more stuff. They want to get enlightened in the same way perhaps that they want to get themselves a new car or a new house or a new boat. But instead of those more obvious forms of material possessions, their latest kick is a spiritual possession. They call it enlightenment. They say, I want to get this too. This will also make me feel more powerful, having this. So let me ask you this question. What would happen if you're a person that says you want to be enlightened? And if I were to tell you, okay, but I just want to let you know, once you've become enlightened, it's not going to have any practical application in your life. It's not going to make you a happier person. It's not going to make you have wonderful relationships with other people. It's not going to enable you to get more stuff, to get more money, to get a raise at your job or get a higher position at your job. It's not going to make you more handsome or prettier. It's not going to make you fly. It's not going to make you president. It's not going to do a goddamn thing to you. Do you still want it? Now, this is what separates the men from the boys and the women from the girls, I guess. Some people would say, I still want it. But I would wager that most people would say, what the fuck do I want that for if I can't get anything from it? There's another aspect to enlightenment, or self-awareness, whatever it might be. What happens if you become enlightened, and after you have become enlightened, you find it impossible to return to your former life and to live life in the way that you've been living it already up to this point? There's a story by the Russian writer Leonid Andreyev. He has a story called Lazarus. And this is the story of what happens to Lazarus after Jesus raises him from the dead, when he comes back to life. Well, everybody in Rome is really excited that Lazarus has come back to life, and everybody is just dying to know what death is like. So they all say, spill the beans, Lazarus. So what's it like? The emperor of Rome wants to know it. Everybody wants to know it. Lazarus answers them by being completely deadpan. He looks at the people who ask him this question with a 1,000-yard stare in his eyes. No visible expression. There's no gleam of life or enthusiasm. Just dull doll's eyes. And he says to them, I was dead. That's all he says. He's got nothing else to say to them. I was dead. So in other words, Lazarus was dead, And he was able, I guess, to see God or infinity or immortality or eternity, however you want to put it. He saw things that it is not given for we human beings while we're alive on the earth to see and to know. He saw what it's like, what infinity is like, and then he came back to the earth. And the only problem with Lazarus when he came back with this stupendous awareness of his that nobody else has, this awareness of his made it impossible for him to function anymore on this plane of existence. He was dead, so he was on a completely different, inexplicable plane of existence. And I guess he should have stayed that way, according to Andreev. And when he comes back here, he just doesn't know what to do. He's completely out of place. He cannot function at all. Well, this is what I'm talking about. Would you want to be enlightened, whatever that is, if once you got it, you weren't able to function anymore like Lazarus? You weren't able to go back to your job anymore. You weren't able to worry about your bank account and your 401k. And you weren't able to worry about all the petty, the stresses and strains of life that you had before you were enlightened. Maybe you don't want a job. Maybe you see in the eye of eternity, everything that we do here on earth is nothing. It's trivial. That's what Lazarus found out, I suppose. And maybe you would find that out too if you were enlightened. So maybe when you're enlightened, not only won't it help you to get more in life, to get more stuff, to have one up on your fellow man, to acquire more power. In addition to that, what makes it even worse is maybe enlightenment will actually make it impossible, intolerable for you to continue living on this plane of existence in the way you have in the past. Would you still want to be enlightened under those circumstances? I don't have any answers. I'm not enlightened. I don't know. I'm just asking these questions. Take the case of Ivan Tolstoy's novella, The Death of Ivan Ilyich. Now, as far as I can tell, everybody who I listen to on the internet and is always saying, wow, I want to get what Ivan Ilyich got at the end of his life. I want the same kind of shattering, overpowering awareness that he has. And everybody praises the novel because they think Tolstoy is telling us how we should live. We should read this book so that we can incorporate Ivan Ilyich's newly found awareness at the very end of his life into our own lives so that we can live better lives, I suppose. There's one podcast the title of which I saw recently. It's He Died, meaning Ivan Ilyich. He died so that we might live. Well, to me, this seems to be exhorting people to read Ivan Ilyich and learn from it, and carry it over into their lives so that they don't make the same mistakes that Ivan Ilyich made. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, at the end of Ivan Ilyich's life, in his very last moments on earth, he has a blinding revelation, and he says, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, there is, as he's on the verge of death, he says, there is no more death. He understands something. There is no death, he says. Whether this means that his ego has been completely deconstructed by Tolstoy, I guess. And now that the ego is gone, there's nothing to fear. There's no death. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But the point I'm making is that is a pretty heavy statement to make, don't you think? There is no more death. I would imagine that could screw your marbles up pretty good, having that kind of insight, ultimate insight into existence, into the ultimate mystery of life and death and eternity. and immortality and God and you name it. So, if Ivan Ilyich had miraculously recovered, for instance, let's say, do you really think with this kind of awareness of his, there is no death, or there is no more death? Do you really think that he could go back to being his old, fat, jolly, grasping, mediocre jurist self? Do you think he would just continue to be a jurist and amass more stuff and live with his wife and children? I don't think so. I think that he would want nothing to do with any of this. I think that if he came back and he recovered miraculously, Ivan Ilyich would come across to ordinary, normal people who live in polite society and by polite society standards as a complete nut, as somebody psychotic. I think that his wife would probably divorce him. His children would become estranged from him. He would have to either become a hermit and live in a cave someplace, go to the desert, or else maybe he'd be thrown into a lunatic asylum. Ivan Ilyich, with this kind of awareness, would look at the shallowness and the hypocrisy of all societal institutions in the same way that I guess Lazarus does. So again, I ask you, when you say that you want to be enlightened, do you? Do you really?